My guest says her work won't be complete until every one of these 600 million girls in the developing world has a fair opportunity to consider Christ and become the woman He created her to be. Michelle Rickett is the founder and president of She Is Safe. Oh, it moves me to say the words. For over a decade, this ministry has been working, actually started in 2002, but really the passion was birthed in a rescue that happened right here when you were just a high school student. Michelle, I want you to tell that story because I'm sure there are some watching today who think they're the wrong stuff. Their life's been too damaged for God to use them in a meaningful way.
Well, I think we have to take a look at the hard things that have happened and ask God, what will you do with this? And that is my story. I was not from a Christian home. My parents were alcoholics and my dad was a pedophile. I was being abused, and when I asked for help, my mother just abandoned me to my dad, and things got really terrible. And I remember talking to a girl at school, and she is my rescuer. She told her mother the things that were happening, and I was rescued by the Department of Family and Children's Services and placed with a Christian home. And it was there that I began to wonder if there could be life for someone like me. I thought my life was over. And through a series of wonderful encounters with God's loving people, I was introduced to Christ and told that God doesn't waste anything, that He would use all the terrible things that had happened to be a platform for ministry if I would cooperate with Him.
You say what was an ordinary Christian home seemed radically beautiful to me. It just speaks to me, your story, of what we can do here and now in simple ways that are profound to those who haven't tasted it.
Oh, that's right. Well, the simplest outreach to me that one family made was to invite me to their home for lunch. They said, would you please come to church with us, and afterwards just come and have lunch with us. Well, I had never seen a functioning family, let alone a Christ-centered family. So to see Mom lovingly prepare the food, Dad pray over the meal, the siblings look at each other fundamentally with love, it was radical to me. And I began to wonder, why didn't somebody tell me about this before? Why didn't someone help my parents learn how to live this way? So I often tell people hospitality, though it may seem ordinary to us, can mean the doorway to the gospel for some poor girl like me.
Now you're saying Mom, Dad, tell us why.
Well, my boyfriend is the one who invited me to his home for lunch.
He's now your husband of 42 years.
Yes, he is, yes, and we partnered together in the gospel all of these years, and but it all began there at a kitchen table, and after he and I were married, I had the opportunity to be mentored by a woman in the church who just saw that I was somehow broken. Even though I was a young Christian woman, there was so much that I needed to unlearn from the world and begin to step into the riches of Christ. And there at her kitchen table, she took me deeply into the Word of God and to Christ, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it hadn't been for those simple ways that people invested in me.
3 cheers for Anne?
Anna, yes.
Anna, a widow who just made room at her kitchen table to talk about important things with you.
That's right.
Oh, I'm just so blessed already, and we haven't even left the continent. And we will. You and your husband went to Kenya for 2 years and saw some things you had never seen before.
That's right. Our little family, our daughters were 1 and 3 years old when we moved to Nairobi, and my husband was the continent director seeking an African person to take that role. And I just tried to plug in the neighborhood, an all-African neighborhood, and was shocked to learn that many girls were kept home from school to work, marry, or be sold. And we're talking about girls 11 to 13 years old. Those who were sold into marriage married men who were 2 or 3 times their age. And it just shot through my heart. And in a flash, God connected the abuse I had suffered as a child with these girls who were being used. And in some cases, these were temporary marriages. So
You want to explain why that happens?
Well, yes, it's actually endorsed in under Islam that a man has these needs, and so he can take a temporary wife wherever he lives. Generally, the age is about 13 to 14 years old, and then he will divorce her in a word and bears no responsibility to this girl or her children. And nobody wants a cast-off wife. Her reputation is finished, and often her health. The #1 killer of adolescent girls is childbirth. So you can see how girls come from behind in so many ways with this wave after wave of injustice.
They have a new category for child marriage now. It's gaining the kind of attention it needs, I think.
You're right. It's under the category of human trafficking, according to the United Nations and the State Department as well. So I'm very thankful for that, because you can imagine the real experience to an 11 or 12-year-old when she is married and taken as a wife. Her childhood is over, and some of these girls become so frustrated with their abuse, sexual abuse in every way, that they self-immolate. They'll pour cooking oil over themselves and light it on fire.
Dear.
So we need to get to them before they get to that point of desperation.
Bring the hope that that you found, and thankfully that many are finding. Women and children, here are some of the stats. Women and children make up 80% of the world's refugees, 70% of the poorest of the poor, 2/3 of the world's illiterate, 4 million annual victims of human traffickers, women and children, and 80% of those who've never heard of Jesus Christ. And yet, in all of these communities, these are the women, these are the ones who make things happen. It's women and girls that drive the culture.
Yes, and they're bringing up the next generation of little boys who are learning how to treat girls and women going forward. There's also been an interesting study by the World Bank that shows if we invested in girls and kept them in school instead of taking them out to work or marry, that over the life of that girl, it would raise the GDP, gross domestic product, of the poorest countries by upwards of 68%. So Jesus told us to go to the least of these. He knows that when we invest in them, their communities and families are enriched. When we don't, we're all the poorer.
Well, we have a little girl who has a very important message for all of us. I'd like you to take a look at that.
Our mothers were born in a hard place. They didn't go to school. They were given or sold to older men when they were little. They carried us, suffered, brought us into the world. God gave us mothers. But without freedom, a voice, or a job, what could they do? God gave us mothers. And if you give our mothers a chance, they can change your village. If you give a mother a goat, she will raise it, get milk from it, or sell it. And her children will have food to eat. If you teach a mother to read and write, she will learn and have a voice. And things will go better for our village. If a mother meets God, she will know she is loved. And that love will change everything. For her and for us and our children forever. God gave us mothers, and He wants them to be free. Would you help our mothers have a chance?
And that little girl's prayers are answered for $30 a month. Rescues a woman.
Yeah, just about $1 a day. Less than it takes to feed the average house cat.
Oh. It's a holistic approach. You have transformation groups. I understand the women line up to get into these groups?
Yes, we always have a waiting list. We go in and train local Christian women to lead these groups where women come in and gain literacy skills, learn about health and hygiene for girls, and then they learn about saving and lending to each other. So they're not charged interest by an outside firm. They really are building their own wealth and their own vocational skills so that they can afford to send their daughters to school and invest in the nutrition of the family as they're being discipled over the course of a year.
This restores dignity to women who've been exploited, abused. I loved to read about Read to Rescue, a program that was at least the vision of a 12-year-old girl.
Yes, Amelia Bernhardt overheard from her mother that girls her age were being sold into marriage or slavery. And she said, that's just not right. And she said, I prayed and prayed and asked God to show me what I could do. I'm just a little girl, but surely there's something I can do. And he gave me this vision that I could ask people to sponsor me to read books. I love to read. And for every book, they would send $5 to She Is Safe to rescue a girl. And so I read and read and read and read. And then she said, I started talking to my friends in my homeschool group, and now Amelia speaks in schools and mobilizes other children to read to rescue.
Oh, you're going to want to go to sheissafe.org. You've just had a little peek at the photo gallery there. Look for Resist the Darkness. Beautiful images there, and stories of hope and courage in this marvelous book, Forgotten Girls. Shocking, but so is the transformation. And you are just a billboard of what it means to get involved outside yourself and discover, in your case, gifts you didn't know God had planted, Michelle.
Well, it's such a joy to participate with God. He benefits the giver much more than the receiver. And I encourage girls who we have helped to rescue, who are in a safe house, that God is not going to waste their story either. There are people that they can intervene for that I could not. They understand the language and culture, and they've been through the hardest things. God wants to use them, and you should see their faces light up when they realize they're important in this whole picture of global outreach.
Exciting. In a world of trouble, such good news. Michelle, God bless you and all you're doing.
Thank you, Maura.